Welcome back to the Boujee Buzz podcast, where we are redefining luxury for women ready to ditch the hard life and step into their soft states of being. Super excited. This is, I guess, like the Valentine's Day special. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see I got a cute little get up on. Got a little, I don't know. You guys know I'm going with the 60s theme this season, and I got this cute shirt with little hearts on it. So rocking my pink and my red today. I feel like I look cute. I feel like, it's extra, but that's kind of the whole point. So I'm really excited about today's episode, you guys. We're gonna be, of course, talking about all things love and relationships, but not in the way that you might think. As you all know, by now, you know how we come in. We're over halfway through the season, and I kind of hinted at a little bit last week of what we'd be talking about, so I'm really excited to get into it. So let's go ahead and dive into our Boujee Bible. So I thought it'd be fitting to tell, since Valentine's Day is coming up in a few days, to tell of one of my favorite Valentine's Day memories. And even though I'm no longer with this person, I thought it was a really good memory. It was like the one time that I was not single on Valentine's Day, and he made it really special. So there was one time in particular. I was in college. I was with this guy, and we were in a long distance relationship. And what ended up happening was he lived like 6 hours away from me at the time. And so, of course, like we couldn't, we would see each other, we usually see each other at least like once a month or something like that. But because of like the way our schedules work, we just weren't able to see each other for Valentine's Day, or so I thought. So, I was kind of like bummed out about it, but I understood, just like, oh, we can just like talk on the phone, like have a little FaceTime date or something like that, right? So what ended up happening was, I think this year, I think Valentine's Day was like on a Friday. And so Valentine's Day came, now we're into the weekend, it's Saturday. And, my ex, like he, like at the time, like he would have to get up really early for his job during the week. And so, on the weekends, like he would usually like sleep in until like 1, 2 in the afternoon. And so, I thought it was kind of weird. Like I remember Saturday I was up and he was like texting me at like 11 a.m. And it's like, okay, they may be thinking that's not super early, but keep in mind, y'all, I said that this dude, like he's usually still dead to the world at this time. And so he did that, like he was texting me, and I was like, and I kind of had a hunt, like I don't know, I kind of was like, that would be so crazy if he surprised me, but it like was like a fleeting thought, I didn't really think too much of it. And so then from there, he would text here and there sporadically, whatever. I'm not thinking too much of it. And so then I think later that evening, I want to say it's around like maybe about 6, 7 that evening, I get a call, or no, like, he calls me, but we're not on FaceTime. We're on like audio, and like he's like in his car and stuff like that, and which was like normal, like when he was, like he had the Bluetooth or whatever, and we would talk sometimes like while he would run errands, blah, blah, blah. And he said that he was running to like the local grocery store, but then I heard like his GPS in his car, because he had like a nice fancy sports car. Well, I think he still does, but it was like, it was very new. It was like, to a broke college student, I was just like, girl, it was impressive. I'm not even gonna lie. But like, I obviously haven't been in the car. Like I knew what it sounded like, and I was just like, why would he need a GPS for like a local grocery store? And so once again, I was like, but then, I didn't want to like get my hopes up. So I guess I was just like trying to not like lean into it, And so anyway, we're on the phone still. Like he does what he needs to do. We're still on the phone just talking. I'm just in my like college apartment or whatever. And then I hear a knock at the door. And I'm at this point, I'm like, I just know not. Like I'm just like, I'm still in denial about it. But it's like I know deep down, but I'm still in denial about it. And so then I go to the door and he's right there. He drove 6 hours just to come surprise me and take me on a date. And so I was like so ecstatic. Like it was really, really sweet for him to have done that. And so I got ready and we just like, it was, it was a chill day. We went to like the movies and we went out to eat. And then when we got to my car, when we got to his car, like in the passenger seat, like when he opened the door for me, he had like a teddy bear and like a card, and it was like super sweet. Yeah, we went on a date, and then he dropped me back off afterwards, and he literally got right back on the road to drive all the way back to like his like where he lives. And so yeah, he literally like was in and out, like literally came 6 hours there just to take me on a date for a few hours and then drove 6 hours back, so that he could, like settle back in before he had to start work, on that Monday. Because by the time we got back, it was like, like around 12, 1 something in the morning. So he got on the road immediately after he dropped me off, went back, and then, yeah. And so it was like really sweet. And so, yeah, even though we're not no longer together, that was a really special Valentine's Day memory that I had. And so I thought I'd share. Let me know what some of your favorite Valentine's Day memories are. And I used one from when I was in a relationship because it was the only time that I was in a relationship on Valentine's Day so far. It's not happened yet, but you never know. You never know. Hell, who knows? By the time this airs, I may be in a relationship. I don't know. But yeah, so let me know like some of your favorite Valentine's Day memories, and it doesn't have to be like with the significant other or former significant other. It can be a Galentine's Day. I don't know what they do for like I don't know. Do guys celebrate Valentine's Day when they're single? I don't. Whatever, like, but whatever your memory is, it could even be from like when you were younger in school and stuff, because I used to love, like, how you had to get the Valentine's Day cards and stuff for all your classmates. That was always cute. So yeah, share with me some of your favorite Valentine's Day memories, and without further ado, let's get into a little Boujee business. Shout out to the sponsor of today's episode, Her Timeless Brand, which is the creative agency where strategy meets modern design. It is run by none other than our very own Chief Creative Officer, Erica Ortiz, who serves as the lead rebrand strategist and designer. Her Timeless Brand is designed for women of faith who want to increase their brand's visual value and give their audience the luxury experience they deserve. Signature offers include the Essentials package, which includes brand strategy, brand identity, mini social kit, and a customized 2-page website, as well as the Brand Refine Her package, which includes brand strategy, a photo shoot mood board, brand identity, 15 pieces of marketing material, and a customized 5-page website. Just an FYI, y'all, that Her Timeless Brand is behind the lovely logos, fonts, and social media aesthetic for Boujee Boss Media, so you already know it's top tier, okay? You can visit hertimelessbrand.com to learn more. Thanks again to Erica and the HTB team for sponsoring this episode. Now let's dive right back in. Okay, let's get into it. So, let me just start by saying that this episode is not going to be about any of those tired ass relationship think pieces that circulate the media. And to that note, actually, let's just dive right in. So the first stereotype, or whatever you want to call it, that I am sick of is, to that note, fighting to prove your preferences on like a basic compatibility level. Like, it's not about like, the deep, relationship topics and discussions and issues that, plague relationships, but like, it's like the surface level stuff, or just stuff that's just like based on just general compatibility, and not even like, issues within a compatible, healthy relationship. So things like, sex, like, obviously, that's an important topic, but like, whether you want to, first of all, if you want to have sex in a relationship, if you don't, like, if you're, want to wait until marriage or something, if that's what you want, right? Like, so that conversation, the monogamy versus polygamy conversation, the finances, the whole thing about the gold digger and like who, like, are you gonna date men for money? Are you not? Should women be kept? Should they not? Who needs to do the cooking and the cleaning? Like all of that stuff. Those are important conversations to have, but not on like this surface level that I've been seeing everywhere when you're dealing with people who are committed to misunderstanding each other. Honestly, a lot of those topics like can be resolved. A lot of those issues or differences can be resolved just by like finding someone who is compatible out the gate, who agrees with what you agree with. Like if you know that you don't want to have sex before marriage, then maybe not date people that want to have sex before marriage. If you know you want to be in a monogamous relationship, maybe don't try to argue your point to somebody who's a polygamist and try to get them to commit to only one person. Like a lot of these things are just like common sense, and a lot of these red flags are revealed to us in the beginning. And I don't know, I'm just tired of seeing like these, and I get it, like a lot of it's just like, I mean, that stuff is, it's viral and it's like, it triggers people, and so it's, it's gonna garner the attention and all that. But like, I'm just so tired about that because it tainted the view of like positive relationship conversations as a whole. And now when people hear like anything about a relationship podcast or any sort of relationship based content, so many people now roll their eyes because of like all the bullshit, like surface level stuff that we're subjected to, when it's like a lot of that surface level stuff they be talking about. Like I'm not about to be arguing my point. Like if you want to do polygamy, that's cool. If that's what you're into, I'm happy for you. But babe, like I ain't sharing shit, and I'm not about to prove to you why I should consider otherwise. That for me is a non-negotiable, and so ain't no need for us to debate or argue about it. It is what it is, and that's that on that. And so yeah, like this is not about to be about any of that surface level stuff, but really deep rooted things that I think especially in American culture, because I mean that's really the only thing I can speak to, living here in America, being born in America, being an African American. I know there's some similarities in other cultures, but yeah, I really wanted to just speak to like the deep rooted stuff. And I also wanted to be clear that this is not going to be like a whole men versus women sort of thing. I do think, like obviously men and women, they are wired differently. I do believe that. So, sometimes that dialogue, when you're dealing with people that are actually intellectual and got some sense, it's interesting dialogue to watch. But I didn't want to focus that around, like I didn't want that to be the perspective of today's episode. And so yeah, let's just get into it, man. So that was kind of, I guess, the first point in and of itself. But the second thing, and the main thing that I really wanted to speak to, and this is something that I noticed, is around like just like ageism when it comes to love and relationships and how it differs for men and for women. So one thing, and this is, let me just preface this by saying this is with the, like if we're talking about the quote unquote American dream, or like, like the societal norm, I guess, is like, getting married, like settling down, like getting married and having kids. Obviously not everybody wants to get married, not everybody wants kids. Some want one and not the other, some want neither, whatever the case may be. So I want to preface this by saying that when I say like settling down, and like I mean, this is the assumption that like marriage is the end goal, right? Because that is a norm. That's a societal norm. That's a societal like stereotype, right? So, with the assumption that this end goal that I'm speaking of is marriage, I feel like for women, there's often like this maximum age cap, like the golden age, right? Which is, it's not really the golden age, but like 30 is the number, right, that like triggers women everywhere of like, by 30 I want to be married and have kids or whatever, right? And then for men, I notice it's like the opposite. It's like there's like a minimum age of like at least 35 before you're ready to settle down, and before that, like you're encouraged to kind of just like spread yourself out and do your best whole thing, right? And I think both are very toxic, and I'm gonna speak to each. So from the perspective of a woman, obviously with me being a woman, especially with me being from the South, oh my gosh, like by the time that I graduated college, I mean, half the people that I knew already had families. And I mean, hell, even in my own circle, I'm the only one that's like not in a married or in a serious relationship. And so I think obviously, there is some truth to, it definitely is a societal norm for sure, for women to settle down earlier. Right. And sometimes, it is a line. Sometimes that's what's, if that's what's meant for you, that's what's meant for you. But to put a cap on women, and say that, by this certain time, you've got to be this certain thing, it puts women in a position to feel like they have to rush things, or feel like, they have to settle for whomever they're with in those earlier years because of like that, the ticking time bomb pressure that you may feel, which is extremely toxic. And then, on the men route, like obviously I don't know what it's like to be a man, but I do feel like, it is unfair to men in the way to, put this pressure on them to like, hey, go sow your wild oats. And, then at 35, that's a number that I hear a lot from men when it comes to like when they want to settle down and that sort of thing. And I feel like, if that's the way things work out, then great. But I do feel like it's extremely dangerous to like expect anyone to go from like, sowing their wild oats to immediately being in family man mode, because no one is that disciplined to where they can just flip a switch like that. And so then that's when you end up with these situations where like men feel like there was no like gradual growth. There was no like, because it was going from like one extreme to the other, which I feel like is unfair. I remember, gosh, I think I saved it on my Instagram. If I can find it, it was actually, ironically enough, I think it was like a podcast. I don't know if the podcast was a relationship podcast, but it was a bunch of Black men talking on a podcast. And it was probably one of the only podcasts I've seen of men talking about relationships that like didn't make me cringe. And he was actually talking about that, and how like, kind of like dangerous that sort of like thinking can be, and that sort of pressure can be for men, to expect them to go from like hoeing and to like flip a switch. Okay, let's, now let's get married, let's do that. And it's like, that's a gradual thing, babe. Like, and like I said, I mean, you could be as disciplined as you want to be, but that's a completely different mentality, a completely different lifestyle. Like, that is nothing that can be, turned on overnight. And so what position are you putting men in, the men that are being pressured to do that, especially if that's not what feels authentic to them? Because contrary to popular belief, there's some men out there who like, they don't want to be like sleeping around. Like, I mean, that's what you do. Enjoy yourself, be safe, whatever. But like, that's not everybody's reality. And that's the point that I'm trying to drive home here. Just like it's not everybody's reality on the, for a woman to settle down, super young. And then on the flip side, obviously we've seen like a lot of like it being in a different way, especially for career women like myself, like that ideology, like with a man being like pushed on women, like, oh, if you're a career woman, then you should like adopt the whole think like a man, and I guess act like a man to concept of like, okay, yeah, like sow your wild oats and like, get established in your career and blah blah blah, and then settle down. I mean, it's the same thing. I think it's, what's toxic about it is that like it's like one extreme or the other. It's like black and white, when that's not how the world works. And there's no sort of gradual anything. It's just like one day it's okay, it's permitted, to be a certain way, and then the next you're expected to just like do a complete 180, which is just not realistic. And I feel like for me in particular, I've experienced a little bit of both as a woman. Like on one end, feeling like, like, okay, when are you gonna settle down? When are you gonna have babies? That sort of thing. And then on the other hand, like, you shouldn't be thinking about that whatsoever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whatever the case may be, both are toxic. I know for me, like, just being, transparent about where I am and who I am and what I know I can handle. I am a lover girl, okay? I have done the situationship thing. I done the friends with benefits, the sneaky link, whatever you want to call it. I done been there, done that. It's not for me. Like, I always catch feelings. I'm a lover girl now, and for me, marriage is an end goal. So, I mean, I guess in that regard, like, knowing that, okay, I'm not really a casual fling type of girl, and marriage is an end goal, I guess you could say I'm dating to marry, which I feel like when people say that, like, so many others who are not enlightened, I guess you can say, assume that means that I, like, want to run down the aisle tomorrow. Absolutely not. That would scare the shit out of me. But what it means is that I'm, like, dating with intention. Like, obviously, like, if we're just beginning the dating process and we're not exclusive yet, like, like, that's cool. Like, we're getting to know each other, whatever. But at some point, after, a few rounds of dates, I'm going to be like, okay, well, where's this going? Because to me, whereas some people might be like, oh, well, your career is taking up so much of your time, so you should just have something casual. For me, it's kind of a reverse thing. For me, it's like, well, I already have a hard enough time as it is making time for the loved ones already in my life. So if I'm carving out some time for, like, a romantic interest, then I need to see some potential in it somewhere, And so that's my personal, like, thought process or feelings about it, and I'm comfortable with that. I've accepted that about myself. I know that about myself, and so knowing that, like, that's just kind of how I move when it comes to dating. And so, it's an interesting spot to be in, because I am, like, on the outward end, like the New York girl with the, creative career in the city and all of that, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like knowing that while I am that, and while I'm happy, like, I'm content, at some point I do desire companionship and courtship, and I mean, I guess that's considered traditional, like, to want to get married and stuff, but, like, that's what I want, and that's, like, in some ways, I guess I fit the societal norm, and then in others, I don't. But, like, it's about what works best for me, what feels right to me, what feels most aligned to me. I'm not about to go have, like, a hot girl summer if that's what I don't want to do. I'm not gonna, like, date around if that's not what I want to do. Me personally, like, I've talked to a couple different guys at once, and, like, just on, like, a texting level, and I was overwhelmed. I couldn't keep up with both. Like, and it wasn't even because it was, like, a keeping a secret, because that wasn't even the situation. It's just like, I already, like I said, I have a hard enough time remembering to respond back to my mama. Like, I'm not cut out for that. I'm not cut out for that life. Like, it just ain't for me, babe. Okay. And so, while it's like, hey, I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if I'll be married with a kid by 30. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. What I do know is, I'm going to be choosing what's best for me, and I'm going to be choosing what feels right. What feels right to me, what feels most aligned. And I would encourage, all of you to do the same. And then there's also this other point around just, like, continuing on this route of, like, if marriage is the end goal, like, once you're in a relationship, like, I guess, like, how you prioritize your partner, right? Which I guess, I don't know, I guess I have traditional thoughts in this way too, because it's like, while I do believe you should not be given, like, wife behavior to a boyfriend, at the same time, like, if marriage is what you're working towards, like, there needs to be, as time progresses, like, there should be, like, an increase. Like, you should be climbing the ladder, so to speak, on their priority list, because, I do believe that, like, your spouse should be your top priority. Your family should be your top priority. So it's like, at some point, and I mean, there's no one right way, I guess, to do that. It looks different for every relationship, I suppose, but I mean, what does that look like? Like, how do you still set boundaries while like, you know, growing to that point of marriage. What does that look like? You know, I don't know the answer. And it, you know, there's no pressure for anyone to give a response. It's just more so something to ponder, I guess, for, you know, your own individual lives. But like, what does that look like? And once again, regardless, like, what feels right? You know, what feels right to you? What feels most aligned? And also to that note, like when it comes to listening to the advice, you know, I obviously, you know, we don't know everything, especially like being younger people. And I know some older people may listen to the podcast, but just, you know, for like the younger millennials and like Gen Z, being listening to the advice of like other people, it's a weird thing because it's just like you want to, like, you don't want to be a know-it-all, but at the same time, like, some advice that people give, or a lot of advice that people give, is often through a tainted lens of like their own traumas and their own, like, you know, negative experiences, which is like, you know, not always, sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not. So it's like, what do you do in those sorts of situations, you know? And so then there's the fact of like, okay, like being careful about the advice, like whom you seek counsel in, is really, really important. I mean, I think that's just a life thing in general, but like who you seek counsel in, like whatever. I would go as far as to say, just based off of mentors that I seek counsel from, like going to people in, I go to different mentors for different things. And so, but I make sure that whatever mentor I have, like if I'm going to someone for love advice, or if I'm, you know, taking heed of someone, like love advice from someone, they need to be someone who is like in a position, well, they don't need to be, but there needs to be at least one person in your life who is like a model for you in that way, right? Because I mean, there are some people who, like, they may not be at the point, like they may have learned from the loss that they have experienced, so they may not be in a position in their love life that you desire to end up in, but they could still have good advice. But like, I think it's super helpful where you have someone that you can not emulate, but just like a North Star, like, because you know that, you know, it's kind of like proof that it works almost. And so it's always cool when you can have that, you know, like if your goal is like marriage, then I mean, I don't think you should only listen to single people, like, you know, and like vice versa. You know, if you don't want to get married, then maybe you shouldn't only go to married couples for love advice, you know, if that's not an end goal for you, because it's going to be through a different lens. And so, yeah, that's something that I would say. Okay, so today's Boujee Bible verse is to not let societal norms or societal stereotypes make you feel pressured to make decisions, any sort of decision around your love life, really your life in general. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to live with that. You have to live with those decisions, and life is just too short to make ones that don't make you happy, that don't fulfill you, that don't feel aligned. And I mean, especially when you're involving other people, that's how people get hurt. And that's obviously the last thing anyone needs or wants. So, you know, stay true to like what feels right to you, even if it may not be what society says, you know, is the norm. You know, at the end of the day, like, you know, try to, you know, take advice here and there. We don't know everything. And, you know, some advice is really beneficial and helpful. But at the same time, you know, take that advice in, take what you feel applies to you, try to make the wisest decision based off what feels right, what feels the most aligned, what feels the most progressive, right? Something that'll help move you forward in life, and go from there. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I always get kind of antsy when it comes to like talking about relationships on this show, because I just feel like, you know, relationship podcasts have become such a played out thing now in media, and a lot of times like you just see the surface level, which, you know, I already talked all about that earlier, so I'm not even gonna fall back down that rabbit hole. But, you know, it's always kind of just, you know, there's so much more to those conversations. And so I hope that, you guys got a fresh perspective from me, or at least like a relieving perspective from me. I didn't want this to be one of those like men versus women sort of thing, like we usually see, because I mean, at the end of the day, I think everyone suffers when it comes to a lot of these stereotypes that we see being promoted. And so I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you agree with, what you may not agree with, if any. I'm curious, like, I'm always about having open dialogue. So I would love to know your thoughts. DM me, like email, comment, rate, all that good stuff. Subscribe. Also, before I forget, shout out to the Boujee Bop of this week. It is Heavy by Tank and the Bangers. I'm new to her. Shout out to Jasmine, my production assistant, for putting me on. I kind of heard her name in the media, but I hadn't really listened to any of her music. And I knew as soon as I heard this song and listened to the lyrics that it would be the perfect fit for today. So vibe out to that. Shout out to Tank and the Bangers for making dope music as always. Stay bougie, stay bossed up. Happy early Valentine's Day, guys, and I will catch you next week.